Have you ever dreamed of walking out your door into a charming cottage garden overflowing with flowers, buzzing bees, colorful blooms, butterflies drifting by, all without spending a fortune? Well, stick around because in today's video, I'm going to show you 10 perennial flowers that thrive from seed. They're easy to grow, budget-friendly, and the best part? Once you plant them, they'll come back year after year, making your garden even more beautiful with time. We're talking about flowers that give you that classic cottage garden look without draining your wallet. Let me give you a little peek at what's coming. When I first started gardening, I made the same mistake a lot of people do. I'd walk into a nursery, fall in love with those big, beautiful blooms, and spend way too much money filling up my cart. And sure, my garden looked nice for a season, but when the next spring rolled around, I was back at square one, shelling out even more cash just to keep things going. That's when I discovered the magic of perennials you can grow from seed. Instead of buying pricey plants every year, I could start these beauties myself, watch them take off, and enjoy them season after season. Some of them even reseeding and spreading on their own. It completely changed how I garden. And that's exactly what I want for you too. A garden that's full, colorful, and thriving without breaking the bank. If you love practical gardening tips that save money and bring more beauty into your space, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now. I share fresh ideas every single week, and I'd love for you to be part of this gardening community. And don't go anywhere, because if you stick with me to the end of this video, I'm going to share my #1 trick for getting these perennials to come back for free year after year. You'll never look at your garden the same way again. First up, we have Delphiniums, one of the most dramatic cottage garden flowers you can grow. If you've ever seen those towering spires of purple, blue, or even white blooms, you know why they're such a showstopper. They add instant height, elegance, and that classic old-fashioned charm to any garden bed. Now, a lot of people think delphiniums are difficult, but the truth is, they thrive from seed once you know a couple of simple tricks. They're surprisingly hardy, and if you get them started early, you can enjoy their gorgeous blooms year after year. When it comes to growing conditions, delphiniums really love cool weather and full sun. They'll tolerate part shade, but you'll get the best height and color if you give them at least 6 hours of sunlight a day. They prefer rich, well-draining soil, so if your soil is on the sandy side, mix in some compost before planting. And one important thing, they don't like dry roots, so consistent watering is key, just don't let them sit in soggy soil. For sowing, here's my best advice. Start the seeds indoors about 8 to 10 weeks before your last frost date. Delphinium seeds germinate best in cooler temperatures, so don't put them right on a hot windowsill. A cooler room works better. Cover the seeds lightly, keep the soil moist, and be patient. Sometimes they take a couple of weeks to sprout. Once the seedlings are a few inches tall, you can harden them off and transplant them outside. Now here's my personal tip. I like to stake my delphiniums early, even when they're young, because once those flower spikes shoot up, a strong wind or heavy rain can knock them right over. By staking them ahead of time, you'll save yourself a lot of heartache. So let me ask you this, would you grow delphiniums in bold, dramatic blues, or do you prefer the softer pastel shades? I'd love to know which color speaks to your garden style, so drop your answer down in the comments.
Next on our list is echinacea, better known as coneflowers. And let me tell you, if there's one plant every cottage garden should have, this is it. Coneflowers are tough, cheerful, and an absolute magnet for pollinators. You'll see bees, butterflies, even goldfinches flocking to them once the seed heads develop. Echinacea thrives from seed because it's naturally hardy and incredibly forgiving. Even beginner gardeners can grow these successfully. Once they're established, they'll come back stronger each year and spread slowly, giving you more blooms without any extra effort. As for growing needs, these beauties love full sun, at least 6 to 8 hours a day, and they can handle poorer soils better than most perennials. In fact, they thrive in areas where other flowers struggle. They're also drought tolerant, which means once they're settled in, you don't have to baby them with constant watering. They're the definition of low maintenance. For sowing, you can either direct sow in the garden after the last frost or start them indoors about 6 to 8 weeks beforehand. The seeds need a little light to germinate, so don't bury them too deep. Just press them into the surface of the soil and keep it evenly moist until they sprout. One little insider trick: echinacea seeds sometimes respond well to a short period of cold stratification, meaning you pop them in the fridge for a couple of weeks before sowing. It helps break dormancy and improves germination rates. Here's my personal tip I've learned the hard way. Once the flowers fade, don't rush to deadhead them. Leave the seed heads on the plants. Not only do they look beautiful in the winter with a little frost on them, but they also provide food for birds. Plus, the seeds can self-sow around your garden, giving you surprise new plants the following spring. So tell me, who else loves watching butterflies dance around their coneflowers in summer? Honestly, it's one of my favorite sights in the garden, and I think you'll love it too. Now, let's talk about a plant that practically defines the cottage garden: hollyhocks. Tall, graceful, and covered with blooms from top to bottom, they're the kind of flower that makes people stop in their tracks and say, "Wow, that looks like a storybook garden." Hollyhocks are surprisingly easy to grow from seed. They're biennials, which means in their first year, they focus on growing strong leafy rosettes at the base. Then, in their second year, they send up those iconic flower spikes that can reach 6, 7, even 8 feet tall. But here's the magic. Once you've planted them, they self-seed freely. So you'll start seeing new little hollyhock babies popping up year after year. It's like planting once and getting flowers forever. As for their needs, hollyhocks love full sun, and the more sunlight you give them, the stronger and taller they'll grow. They're not too picky about soil, as long as it drains well, but adding a little compost to planting time will keep them happy. They can handle a bit of neglect, which is why they've been a staple in cottage gardens for centuries. Now, for sowing, you can direct sow hollyhock seeds outdoors in late spring or early summer, right where you want them to grow, because they don't always like being transplanted. Just scatter the seeds on the surface and lightly cover them with soil. Keep the area moist until they sprout. If you want blooms in their first year, you can start them indoors earlier, but honestly, letting them settle into the garden naturally often works best. Here's a personal tip I've learned the hard way. Hollyhocks are tall, but their stems can be a little flimsy in strong winds. I like to tuck them against a fence or along the side of a shed where they get some shelter and support. Not only does this protect them, but it also creates that iconic cottage look, flowers rising tall against a rustic backdrop. And let me ask you, would you go for the classic single-color hollyhocks like deep burgundy or soft pink? Or would you plant a rainbow mix for that wild, whimsical look? Drop your answer in the comments, because I'm always curious what gardeners lean toward. All right, let's move to something a little more cheerful and easygoing, the Shasta Daisy. If hollyhocks are the grand old spires of a cottage garden, Shasta Daisies are the sunshine. With their bright white petals and sunny yellow centers, they bring such a sense of joy and freshness to any space. Shasta Daisies are one of the easiest perennials to grow from seed, which is why I always recommend them for beginner gardeners. They're hardy, adaptable, and they bloom generously once established. And here's the best part. They'll bloom for weeks and weeks in the summer, often right when your garden needs a burst of brightness. When it comes to growing conditions, daisies love full sun, though they can tolerate a little bit of partial shade. They'll thrive in average soil, as long as it's well draining. Too much rich fertilizer can actually make them floppy, so they're perfect for gardeners who don't want to fuss too much. And once established, they don't need a ton of water, just regular moisture during dry spells.
For sowing, you can start Shasta Daisies indoors 8 to 10 weeks before your last frost, or direct sow them outside once the danger of frost has passed. The seeds are tiny, so just sprinkle them on the soil surface and press them in gently without burying them too deep. They need a bit of light to germinate. Within a couple of weeks, you'll see little green sprouts that grow into sturdy clumps. Here's my personal tip. After their first big flush of blooms, give them a good trim. Cut the spent flowers back, and they'll reward you with a second round of blooms later in the season. Plus, it keeps the plant tidy and full. I also love cutting daisies and bringing them inside. A mason jar filled with fresh Shasta Daisies on the kitchen counter? Instant happiness. So let me ask you, do you prefer your daisies standing tall in the garden beds, or do you love cutting them for simple, rustic bouquets indoors? I know for me, it's a little bit of both. Plant number 5, foxglove digitalis. Those tall spires of bell-shaped blooms are the secret to that dreamy, old-world cottage look. They're elegant, a little mysterious, and they draw the eye straight up, adding instant height and romance to a border. Foxglove thrives from seed because it's naturally generous. Most are biennials. They form a leafy rosette the first year, then put on a spectacular flower show the second. After that, they'll happily drop seed and give you new seedlings, so once you start a patch, it can renew itself with very little effort. Give them morning sun or bright dappled shade. They adore cool conditions and moist, well-drained, compost-rich soil. If your summers run hot, a little afternoon shade keeps the blooms fresher and taller. Water regularly while they're establishing, then just keep the soil from drying out completely. In windy spots, a discreet stake saves those tall stems from snapping. For sowing, start seeds indoors 8 to 10 weeks before your last frost, or direct sow in late summer, early fall for blooms the following year. The seeds are tiny and need light to germinate. Press them onto the surface instead of burying them. Keep them evenly moist and cool until they sprout. When you transplant, handle the roots gently and space plants so the rosettes have room to breathe. Here's my personal tip. Let 1 or 2 spikes go to seed and deadhead the rest. You'll extend the bloom period, control where they reseed, and still get a fresh crop of babies next spring. And a quick note of care. Foxglove is toxic if ingested, so I always wear gloves when handling spent spikes, and I'm mindful about where I plant them if children or pets are frequent visitors. Your turn. Which foxglove steals your heart? The pure white alba, the soft apricots, or the classic freckled purples? Tell me what you'd plant down your garden path. Plant number 6, lupines. When those towering candle-like spires open, it's like someone painted your garden with a box of pastels. Indigos, pinks, creams, even bicolors. They're cottage charm with a wild meadow twist. Lupines love being grown from seed because they prefer to settle where they'll live. With their deep taproot, they don't enjoy much disturbance, and once they're established, they'll return reliably. They also belong to the pea family and enrich the soil with nitrogen, which quietly boosts the health of neighboring plants. They thrive in full sun to light afternoon shade, especially in regions with cooler nights. Think well-drained, slightly acidic to neutral soil, not too rich. Keep the moisture steady in spring. Once the roots are deep, they're fairly resilient. Skip heavy fertilizer. It encourages foliage at the expense of flowers. For sowing, help the hard seed coat along by soaking seeds overnight or gently scarify them with sandpaper before planting. You can direct sow in early spring or start indoors 6 to 8 weeks before last frost in deep cells or biodegradable pots so you can plant the whole thing without disturbing the roots. Harden off carefully and plant in small groups. They're most breathtaking in drifts of 7, 9, or more. My tip? After the first flush, deadhead the spent spikes down to the foliage to encourage a lighter second bloom. Then allow a few pods to mature if you want seedlings. Harvest seed when the pods turn brown, but before they pop. They love to fling. I also mix lupines with foxgloves and delphiniums for a layered skyline of blooms that bees can't resist. Tell me this, are you team deep indigo, or do you lean toward the softer pinks and creams? And would you plant a bold drift, or sprinkle them through your borders for little surprises? Next up, one of the most cheerful and beginner-friendly flowers you can grow, the Black-eyed Susan, or Rudbeckia. With their golden yellow petals and dark chocolate centers, they bring an instant burst of sunshine to the garden even on cloudy days. They're tough, dependable, and they absolutely scream cottage charm. Black-eyed Susans thrive from seed because they're fast growers, resilient, and many varieties will happily reseed themselves. Once you introduce them to your garden, you'll often see volunteers popping up the following year in the most delightful spots. They're the kind of flower that multiplies your investment without any extra work. When it comes to growing needs, Rudbeckias love full sun. The more, the better. They'll tolerate average soils and even poor soils, as long as it drains well. They're fairly drought-tolerant once established, making them a great choice if you want beauty without constant attention. Water them regularly in their first season, then step back and let them toughen up. For sowing, you can direct sow in late spring after the last frost, or start them indoors 6 to 8 weeks earlier. The seeds need light to germinate, so just press them into the soil surface rather than burying them. Keep the soil consistently moist until the seedlings are established, and then thin them to about a foot apart to give each plant space to shine. Here's my personal tip. If you deadhead spent flowers throughout the summer, Black-eyed Susans will keep pumping out new blooms for weeks and weeks. But I also like to leave the last flush of flowers in place. As they dry, the seed heads become natural bird feeders in autumn and add a lovely texture to the fall garden. So tell me, would you plant Black-eyed Susans in one big golden drift for maximum impact, or scatter them throughout your borders for pops of sunshine? I'd love to hear your style. Now let's bring in something a little more whimsical and delicate, the columbine, or aquilegia. With their nodding, spurred flowers in jewel tones and pastels, they look like little fairy lanterns floating in the garden. They're romantic, unique, and add an element of surprise to a cottage border. Columbine thrives from seed because it's a naturally adaptable plant. It's short-lived as a perennial, usually only living 3 or 4 years, but the good news is it self-seeds freely. Once you establish a patch, you'll get a rolling display of new plants each spring, often in unexpected color combinations. Growing needs are refreshingly simple. Columbines enjoy partial shade to dappled sunlight, making them perfect for those tricky spots under trees or along north-facing walls. They'll tolerate full sun in cooler climates, but in warmer regions, some afternoon shade keeps them happy. They're fairly drought-tolerant once established, making them a great choice if you want beauty without constant attention. Water them regularly in their first season, then step back and let them toughen up. For sowing, you can direct sow in late spring after the last frost, or start them indoors 6 to 8 weeks earlier. The seeds need light to germinate, so just press them into the soil surface rather than burying them. Keep the soil consistently moist until the seedlings are established, and then thin them to about a foot apart to give each plant space to shine. Here's my personal tip. Columbines cross-pollinate easily, which means over time you'll discover surprise colors and hybrids popping up in your garden. It's like nature's own breeding experiment. No two blooms are exactly alike. I always leave a few seed pods to mature and scatter naturally just to see what exciting new shades appear the following year. So tell me, would you rather grow a classic deep blue columbine, or would you experiment with mixes to see what magical colors your garden creates? Let me know, because this is one plant where surprises are half the fun. Number 9 is one of the happiest, most easygoing flowers you can grow, coreopsis. Sometimes called tick seed, this perennial is like sprinkling sunshine across your garden. With its masses of golden yellow blooms, it creates a carpet of color that keeps going all summer and even into fall. It's cheerful, reliable, and such a perfect fit for that wild, free-flowing cottage style. Coreopsis thrives from seed because it germinates quickly, grows fast, and doesn't demand perfect soil. Once established, it comes back reliably every year and often spreads by reseeding. If you're looking for that plant it once and enjoy it forever effect, this is one to include.
In terms of needs, coreopsis loves full sun and will flower most generously in bright open spaces. It actually does best in poor to average soils. Too much rich compost or fertilizer can make it leggy. One of its superpowers is drought tolerance. Once the roots are down, it'll keep blooming even when you miss a watering or two. For sowing, you can direct sow outdoors in spring after the frost has passed, or start indoors 6 to 8 weeks early if you want blooms sooner. The seeds are tiny, so just press them onto the soil surface and keep them moist. They need a bit of light to germinate. Thin seedlings to about a foot apart, and soon you'll have dense, blooming mounds. My personal tip: deadhead regularly to keep the flowers coming non-stop. But toward the end of summer, let a few seed heads dry and scatter naturally.
That way, you'll get self-sown surprises popping up next season. I also love cutting coreopsis for arrangements. They last beautifully in a vase and bring a cheerful glow indoors. So here's my question. Would you plant coreopsis as a big golden sweep through a border, or mix it with purples and blues for contrast? Either way, it's a garden brightener you'll never regret. And finally, number 10, the fiery, joyful gaillardia, often called the blanket flower. If you want non-stop color, even in the heat of summer when other plants start to fade, this one is your best friend. With its bold red, orange, and yellow petals, sometimes solid, sometimes bicolored, it looks like the garden is on fire in the best possible way. Gaillardia thrives from seed because it doesn't ask for much. It germinates readily, grows quickly, and once it's in your garden, it'll bloom its heart out. It's short-lived as a perennial, usually only 3 to 4 years, but it self-seeds so generously that you'll always have a fresh wave coming in. Growing needs are simple: full sun, lean soil, and good drainage. In fact, gaillardia prefers poor soil over rich. Too much fertility, and you'll get more leaves than flowers. It's also incredibly drought tolerant, so it's perfect if you live in a hot, dry climate or just want something tough that doesn't wilt under stress. For sowing, you can direct sow after the last frost or start indoors a couple of months early. Like many cottage perennials, the seeds need light to germinate. Press them onto the soil surface and mist them gently. Within a week or two, you'll see sprouts, and by midsummer, you'll be rewarded with waves of blooms that just keep coming.
Here's my personal tip. Don't be afraid to cut gaillardia back by about 1/3 after the first big flush of flowers. It may look a little severe, but trust me, it bounces back with fresh, vigorous growth and another round of color. And just like with coreopsis, leave a few seed heads in place at the end of the season. Birds love them, and you'll find little baby gaillardias popping up the following year. So let me ask you, would you use blanket flowers as a fiery accent among cooler-toned plants? Or would you go all in with a hot-colored border of reds, oranges, and yellows? I can't wait to hear how you'd style them. All right, before we wrap up, I promised you my #1 trick for getting these perennials to come back year after year, and even better, to multiply, all without spending another penny. Here it is. Learn to collect and save your own seeds. When your perennials finish blooming, don't rush to deadhead everything. Instead, let a few flowers go to seed. You'll notice the petals fading, then the seed pods or heads forming. Once those turn brown and feel dry to the touch, you can carefully snip them off and save the seeds inside. I like to keep things simple: a paper envelope, a label with the plant's name and the year, and a cool, dry place to store them. The following spring, you'll have your very own stash of free seeds ready to go. And they came straight from plants already adapted to your garden's conditions. That means they'll often perform even better than store-bought packets. This one habit has transformed my gardening. Instead of buying flats of new plants each year, I get to enjoy the satisfaction of a garden that grows bigger, richer, and more personal every season, without spending a dime. So, if you take just one thing away from this video, let it be this: don't throw away those seed heads. They're your garden's gift for the future. And there you have it, 10 cottage garden perennials that thrive from seed. Easy, inexpensive, and guaranteed to bring that magical, overflowing cottage garden look to your space. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Which one of these perennials are you most excited to try this year? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one, and I can't wait to hear your choices. If you enjoyed this video and you're looking for more ways to save money while building the garden of your dreams, go ahead and tap that like button. It really helps more gardeners find this channel. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe for new practical gardening tips every single week. And before you head out, here's your next step. Check out my video on designing the perfect cottage garden layout. It'll show you how to place these plants for maximum impact, so your garden looks like it leapt straight from a fairy tale. You can find it right here on the screen. Go watch it next. Thanks so much for spending time with me in the garden today. Until next time, happy growing, and may your cottage garden thrive.